some pretty colourful remarks from you there, but of course Huawei not the only one affected by these decisions. The blast radius in terms of Huawei supply is pretty wide. If you take a look at this chart here, you can see just 3 of them slumping on the troubles of Huawei. And I think Huawei has something like 310 suppliers. Most of them are weaker as a result of this. So how do you reorganize a supply chain like that?
Yeah, and it's not easy, right? As you're pointing out, a lot of these suppliers are American. They're ones that are going to be affected in this process. Question is, are there necessarily substitutes outside of the U.S. that can work in many of those cases? And unfortunately, it's not always that easy. You look at components like radio frequency front end parts, or as you mentioned earlier, when it comes to even software and Google, right? You know, Huawei's been saying that they've got their own homegrown OS that's ready to go. But if there are no Google services and apps that are ported out to that platform, it really doesn't do it much good. The value of that product or the usability of that product is dramatically increased for consumers.
Yeah, and how's it going to affect the 5G rollout as well? There's implications there too, aren't there?
Yeah, there could be. The good thing, I mean, so at least there are other carrier, or rather other network equipment suppliers out there as well. But yes, obviously Huawei was one of those that was leading on that front. I think part of the motivation here is, of course, you know, because of where such that lead that Huawei was driving there, you know, maybe this was part of the motive, in fact, in order to not so much stunt 5G as a whole, but to give Huawei a few speed bumps along the way here as it was pushing forward in this regard.
We saw Samsung shares rising more than 4% in the last session. Is Samsung one of the big winners out of all this?
Yeah, they very well could be. If you look at just handsets alone, you know, Samsung is one of the ones that has that wide breadth of products, the same type of product range that Huawei does. They have the same, you know, type of channel setup and depth in many of these mature markets where Huawei is playing, and so particularly in Europe, right? And so if Huawei no longer becomes one of those key Android players for consumers to turn to, well, who is one of those big alternate suppliers? It's going to be Samsung. Now, of course, there are other Android players out there, but they tend to be a lot more targeted in their approach to the market. So Samsung does stand to benefit from that.
How about Apple? Of course, we know that Huawei passed Apple as a phone maker. Could Apple's business in China be at risk?
Well, Apple is okay. Sorry, Apple. I'm trying to back up a second. If we take a look at Apple and where they might be able to get users from the Android side, I think the challenge with that is that users don't necessarily migrate between the ecosystems that easily. Now, I think where your question was, and I guess where I'm kind of stumbling on, is where is Apple going in China? Don't forget that Huawei in China is probably still going to be in a good position, at least from a operating system perspective, assuming they can get a lot of these components in place. You know, they say they've got a bit of an inventory that's built up, so Huawei can still be in a good position there. But I think the bigger concern is where Huawei looks in the rest of the world. I think within China, they've got at least a little bit more buffer room.
My question was more towards trade retaliation coming from China on Apple's business there. Could we see, are you expecting some sort of retaliation in that sense?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I got you on that one. Come again?
Could the Chinese policymakers retaliate against American businesses, including Apple in China?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, in theory, that is possible. I don't know if that would necessarily come to fruition, but yeah, in theory, of course, it is possible.